ahead and jump right in. All right, so I want to get into a discussion about hormones and more importantly about thyroid health and just break down exactly what that means, what it looks like, and some of the things that you need to pay attention to as a woman who's on her journey to change her body and change it for life. There's so many women who suffer from suboptimal hormonal levels, particularly the thyroid, that don't even know it. They go to their doctors and their doctors tell them they're fine, yet they are symptomatic. And one of the biggest things that drives a lot of women to go ahead and test their thyroid is the fact that they cannot lose weight. Now, there's a little caveat that I have to put into this conversation today before we really get into it, and that's this. We have so many people who blame the inability to change their bodies, the inability to lose weight on a dysfunctional thyroid. Oh, it's hormones. And I think that it's really misplaced when we have a lot of people making fun of that. I've seen that on the internet and other spaces as of late. And as someone who's worked with women from around the globe and specifically worked with women who have hormonal issues, I kind of scoff at that. You know, I'm kind of like, hey, let's go ahead and pump the brakes here and see if we can get to the bottom of this. So there is a difference, ladies, okay, between you dealing with actual hormonal issues that's thwarting your weight loss efforts and you holding up an honest mirror to yourself and admitting whether or not the issues that you're seeing are related to your diet and bad habits. I am not talking about this latter half right here. So I'm more talking to today women who are actually dealing with issues with the thyroid, or you suspect it, and you've been trying to lose weight for some time. Perhaps you are on a training regimen. Perhaps you are on a diet. Perhaps you are doing everything that you should be doing, but nothing seems to be working. This conversation is for you. We've got EP over here in the chat on YouTube who's saying, hello, I have an enlarged thyroid. EP, if you have not had that checked out, make sure you get that checked out because that could be an issue and you might well fall into this category of women that we're going to talk about today. So here's some factoids about thyroid health that I want you to write down, some interesting factoids, okay? Number one, what does the thyroid do for metabolism? That's what I want to take a look at. And I've got a couple of bullet points that you need to keep in mind. Number one, the thyroid gland produces hormones that regulates the body's metabolic rate, controlling heart, muscle, and digestive function, brain development, and bone maintenance. Its correct functioning depends heavily on a good supply of iodine in the body. We are going to talk about the importance of certain supplements in the diet for those of you who are suffering from thyroid issues. And one of the things that helps with thyroid health is making sure that you have enough iodine in the body. All right, so keep that in mind. Scratch that on your brain, write down, take those notes. Hypothyroidism is a common condition where the thyroid doesn't create and release enough thyroid hormone into your bloodstream. This is where it gets tricky because when you go to the doctor, and I'm going to tell you about this and I'll break it down in a minute. When you go to your doctors very often are not looking at the totality of your functioning thyroid. They are actually looking at another gland in the body. And thus, if you are suffering from any kind of thyroid issue, whether you think you have hypothyroidism, whether you think you have hyperthyroidism, Hashimoto's, an enlarged thyroid, and you're going to your doctor and they're saying, whoa, your numbers are normal, dude, what's going on, right? Guys, a lot of times they're not looking at the right things. I'm going to arm you with the information that you need to have when you go to your doctor to request to make sure they are checking the right hormones. Hypothyroidism is more common than hyper, all right? So with hypothyroidism, that is defined as a condition where the thyroid gland does not produce enough thyroid hormone. The body will send TSH, which is the thyroid stimulating hormone, to the thyroid itself. It's released in the pituitary gland. And then that thyroid is going to release a hormone called T4. Then that's when the magic happens. When T4 is released into the body, what it then is converted into is the metabolically active hormone T3. And T3 is that magic hormone that helps to fuel your metabolism along. Now, there's sometimes a dysfunction in that conversion, and that's where you start having trouble. Not only that, there is another hormone called RT3, reverse T3, which I like to call T3's dark matter, because what it does is it goes and it sits in those receptor cells where T3 should be doing its work, and it's like, nah, honey, you need to get on out of here, because I'm gonna sit right here and I'm gonna mess up the metabolism and make everything all crazy, right? So we want to avoid those problems, and when you start seeing a issue in that exchange system, that is when you start to see hypothyroidism, for some of you hyperthyroidism, and other diseases of the thyroid. Today's conversation, guys, we are going to cover a couple of things. The first thing we're going to look at are some statistics about how many people are actually suffering from thyroid issues here in the United States. How many of them specifically are women? Because this audience, my audience, talks specifically to you to help you to get into the best shape of your life, right? So we're going to look at that. The next thing we're going to do is take a look at what you should be requesting from your doctors when it comes to lab tests. All right, and that's a really important step in getting to the bottom as to whether or not you are actually dealing with a thyroid issue that needs to be addressed. Then we're going to take a look at two things. So let's suppose that you found out, okay, I have hypothyroidism, or I'm on the spectrum of that. What do I do next to get my body to finally lose weight? Because at the end of the day, for so many of you, that's what this is all about. So we're going to talk about how you can go ahead and optimize your training, optimize your diet for your hormonal health and your thyroid health. So let's go ahead and get into the second portion of our discussion today, and that is looking at the statistics according to the American Thyroid Association when it comes to who exactly is suffering from thyroid disease. Every time you hear someone has a hard time losing weight, oh, it's my hormones are off. Well, let's get to the bottom of that. Listen to this. More than 12% of the US population will develop a thyroid condition during their lifetime. That's 12% of the entire population, men and women. An estimated 20 million Americans have some form of thyroid disease. 20 million Americans, guys. That's a lot of people. Get this. This is gonna knock your freaking socks off today. And I'm telling you, that's why you need to listen to this to the very end. Up to 60% of those with thyroid disease are unaware of their condition. 60% of people. Can you imagine that? 60%. Insane. If 20 million people in these United States has this issue, but 60% of them don't know, are you in that mix? That's what we need to find out today. Women are 5 to 8 times more likely than men to have thyroid problems. Let me go ahead and say this again, guys. Women are 5 to 8 times more likely to suffer from thyroid disease. Listen, as a woman out here, if you are not concerned by these numbers and you are really having a hard time losing that weight, honey, I don't know what the heck to tell you. All right? Let those alarm bells sound off, and let them sound off proudly. Open your ears right now, because again, 60% of you don't even know that there is a problem, right? So let's go ahead and go on to the next statistic. So 1 woman in 8 will develop a thyroid disorder during her lifetime. So of all the population of American women, 1 in 8 of us will develop a thyroid problem in our lifetime. Undiagnosed thyroid disease may put patients at risk for certain conditions such as cardiovascular diseases, osteoporosis, and for my women of childbearing age, infertility. Our bodies as women are so sensitive, and even your thyroid has an impact on your ability to have kids. Think about that for a moment, right? It is important for you, if that is the road that you're traveling, you're trying to ready your body to bring life into this world, you better know where your thyroid is and start to take control of it now. Even if you're not going towards that step, but you know that sometime in the future you might want to, think about making sure everything is, as we say in New York City, copacetic before you go ahead on that path. Next, pregnant women with undiagnosed or inadequately treated hypothyroidism have an increased risk of miscarriage, preterm delivery, and severe developmental problems in their children. So not only is this a disease that affects your body, but it also has a huge impact on the life you are developing and carrying in your womb as well. Now, most thyroid diseases are lifelong conditions that can be managed with medical attention. Now, that wraps up the statistics, but I want to go back to that last point because there's something so, I don't know, profound in that in a way. And it fits so much into our narrative about what we talk about here on my channel, right? So we talk about female health. We talk about the things that you need to be doing right now as a woman to become better, stronger, leaner, more in control of your physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional health, right? And if we already know that like 1 in 8 women of all of us in this country will develop thyroid disease, and then that last statistic was that most thyroid diseases are lifelong, what can you be doing right now to prevent the disease? How about we look at disease prevention, right? Instead of getting to the point where we are in a state of dis-ease, and now we've got to treat the problem. Isn't it so much better for you to take control of your life, your health, your fitness, and your thyroid now before there's even a problem? We're going to talk about that in a little bit, all right? Because a lot of the things that I'm sharing about how you can go ahead and overcome this once you have the diagnosis still applies to women who are not diagnosed at all, who don't have an issue, but can work as preventative measures because guess what? It's all natural. Yes, it is. So let's go on to the next portion that I want to talk about today, guys. A longer list, symptoms of hypothyroidism. Here's what I want to do. I want to do a little exercise. Grab a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper, or you can count on your fingers, whatever you want to do. For every one of these list of symptoms that I give you, every one of these symptoms, I want you to tick a 1 if you feel these things within yourself. So when I name them, if you're like, oh, fatigue is me, click a 1. The next thing, if that's me, oh my gosh, 1. And then at the end, when I ask you, when I'm done with the list, I'm gonna ask you to tell me how many of those you have in total. So if you ticked off 6, you have 6 total. If you ticked off 10, you have 10 total. And I want you to put that in the chat on YouTube, all right? So let's go ahead and try that experiment right now. So here are the symptoms of hypothyroidism. Fatigue, increased sensitivity to cold, constipation, dry skin, here's the big one, weight gain, puffy face, hoarseness in your voice, muscle weakness, elevated blood cholesterol levels, muscle aches, tenderness, and stiffness. And this could be without the stimulus of exercise, so keep that in mind. That's just in your everyday life. Pain, stiffness, or swelling in your joints. Heavier than normal or irregular menstrual periods. I bet you didn't know that was a sign. Thinning hair, slowed heart rate. Here's another big one. Depression, impaired memory, and finally, one of our ladies in the YouTube chat says she's dealing with this right now. Enlarged thyroid gland, which is also known as goiter. Now, total up however many you have for yourself. And we're gonna talk about that in a moment because you're like, well, Roxy, you listed a litany of things, right? About, I don't know, 15, 20 things on that list. I have 6. Am I okay? You might be, you might not be, all right? If you're seeing that your body is not responding to your program in the way that it needs to, then you might want to go ahead and hold on for a second because I'm going to tell you the next time that you go to your doctor, you go to your primary care, what you need to request from your doctors when it comes to lab results. So let me go on, and now the next thing that I want to take a look at for you guys here is the required testing. Now this part is the most important. All right. And I need you, if you have, several of these symptoms that we talked about, I want you to just go ahead and take a moment to either look at the timestamp